accept your challenge. So, if this is your first time to this channel and you love movies and martial arts, consider hitting that subscribe button. Killmonger versus T'Challa, aka the Black Panther. Absolutely love this fight scene. This was one of the best fight scenes in the movie. What I love about it is it's raw, it's real, and it's based on tradition, African tradition. So obviously Wakanda is an African nation, fictional African nation, but an African nation, and they have traditions. Now, one of the traditions is the position of Black Panther. It's not just some superhero position, but it's a position of being the protector of Wakanda, and that means that you need to be the best warrior. Anyone of royal blood can challenge the king for that title. Panther being a warrior, it's great because you get to see the African culture within martial arts, and particularly because Chadwick Boseman, who played Black Panther, aka T'Challa, he talked about when they were training to the beat of the drum, because within African dance there are actually movements of martial arts within the African dance, and the African beat to the drum actually dictates certain movements or certain styles, certain systems, certain emotions within a fight. And this is very similar to martial arts like capoeira. Capoeira obviously being African in origin. The songs that you hear, they dictate what's going on within the roda, which is the circle of people that surround the two combatants, the capoeira fighters fighting in the middle. Whether it's a nice game they're playing, or whether it's a more aggressive game, or an acrobatic game, or more traditional game, the music is dictating kind of the energy of the fight. And I felt like the score, which was done beautifully by, was it Ludwig Göransson, Swedish composer who actually did the score. Because everybody talks about Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar didn't do the score, he did the sound, he created the soundtrack, which is different. The score is that beautiful African music that you hear throughout the movie. And he worked with a lot of African musicians to bring that music to the movie. I thought the music in the fight represented African martial arts very well with the drum beat, so absolutely loved it. You find out that Eric Killmonger, aka N'Jaka, is actually T'Challa's cousin in the movie, whose father was killed by T'Challa's father, T'Chaka, who we saw in Civil War, and who died in Civil War. Now, this obviously has caused a lot of pain for Eric Killmonger for his life. So he's not only had that abandonment from his uncle, and from his nation, and being left in the United States to be in Oakland and fend for himself, but he's also here for the revenge for his father. So he's carrying a lot of pain coming into this fight, where T'Challa's carrying a different type of pain because he's discovered something about his father that he didn't know. He realized his father wasn't perfect, the perfect man, the perfect warrior, the perfect king that he thought he was. So this causes a bit of conflict with him and his character. So you see these two characters coming head to head at a point where T'Challa doesn't have hatred for Killmonger. I mean, you see even at the beginning of the fight, he's like, this is your last chance, put down your weapons and we can handle this another way. Because he has empathy for Eric Killmonger. Of course, Killmonger he's on a mission. Like, he says it to him, I've been waiting my entire life for this moment. And he's talking about obviously all the people he's killed, including brothers and sisters on the continent. So he's carrying a lot of emotional baggage. There's no way he's going to back down from this fight. And I love the fight because you see within the fight this story. How you see it, the weapons he chooses. First, Killmonger has a sword, beautiful kind of African sword. I'm not sure exactly what that weapon's called, but it's a beautiful sword in one hand, and he's got a spear in the other, which he knocks down, because obviously a spear is a long form weapon, but he knocks it down to make it a shorthand blade. Now, that allows him to hold both weapons, two offensive weapons in one hand. So it shows his intention. And even as he's warming up, he's like, he's very linear, he's very determined. You can see in his movements, just the little bits like that. Obviously T'Challa's warming up by relinquishing the power of the Black Panther and doing the cultural dance and everything else. And you see Killmonger like looking around as that's happening, and he's kind of in awe of what's happening because he's been denied that culture his entire life, his African roots. He's been denied that because he's an African American that's grown up in Oakland, California. So he didn't have that upbringing. So he's kind of amazed by what's happening. You see it a little bit. And then you see Shuri come pass by and look at him, because you see the guilt on Shuri's face that they left him when he was a child. And Killmonger's kind of looking at him like, why, in a way, like, why are you looking at me like this? And he just walks away. There's little subtle moments I thought were really great. What I love about action is what's not said. It says a lot. It says more than the dialogue could possibly say. And the beginning of the fight is just as important as when the fight starts. But like I said, it's the two weapons that Killmonger chose. He chose a sword and a spear, short-handed spear that he knocks down, so he can have two offensive weapons. With T'Challa, you see he's got the traditional short spear and a shield. This is like a Zulu South African weapon. And what I love about this fight and the fights in the film is they display African martial arts, because no one really talks about African martial arts. We all talk about the martial arts from the Orient, from Asia, from China, Japan, etc. Even now, obviously, Brazil. But the good thing about Brazil is Brazil has a lot of African roots. So you've got capoeira, you've got obviously Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which came from Japan. But capoeira came from Angola. It came from Africa, you know, and it was all the different African tribes who brought different martial arts, came together, and then they created capoeira and disguised it in this kind of ritual dance structure, so the slave masters wouldn't know what they were doing. And you see T'Challa perform a lot of capoeira movements, you know, as the Black Panther, you know. You see at the beginning of the movie, he performs a duple armada kick. A lot of his acrobatic movements are very regional capoeira movements. But he also displays some Dambe, Western African boxing in there. He displays, obviously, Zulu stick fighting. So there's a lot of different styles and systems from Africa that's in this fight. And in some of the other fights, earlier fights in the film, like his fight with M'Baku at Warrior Falls as well. With T'Challa, like I said, he chooses a spear and a shield. Now, for me, that tells me he's a defensive character. He's a character he'll kill you. He will kill you if he needs to, but he's about defending his honor, defending his culture, defending Wakanda. You know, he's the protector of Wakanda. So he's got the shield there to protect and the offensive weapon to fend off or kill if he needs to. Like I said, with Killmonger, he's got two offensive weapons in the sword and the spear. Now, during this fight, there is a lot of intensity, especially from Killmonger, who really goes at him, you know, with those defensive weapons. And he displays very sophisticated martial arts skills. You can see, okay, this isn't just a guy who went to MIT. He's a soldier. He's a Black Ops soldier. So obviously he's well trained in various weapon styles, but he's no stranger to traditional martial arts or the tradition of Wakanda. You know, having the war dog tattoo, all the things that his father would have taught him about Wakanda. And obviously his father would have been a warrior as well, so he would have probably taught him some of the African martial arts, as well as the martial arts that he obviously learned when he was growing up as a soldier. So he might have learned a few little movements when he was a child, but he definitely would have progressed that as he grew older, you know, because he knew that he was going to have to challenge for the throne at one point, because this was all planned out from the other Killmonger. And it wasn't a surprise, obviously, that Killmonger won that fight. If you look in the comic books, that shot where he throws him over the waterfall is very iconic. Within the comic book, if you look here, you'll see this iconic shot of Eric Killmonger tossing the Black Panther over Warrior Falls. So that paid really good homage to, I think it was the Jungle Action feature of Black Panther, the Jungle Action comic book series. Like you see, here's Eric Killmonger throwing T'Challa over Warrior Falls, and that paid really good homage to the comic book series. Love this illustrated history of the King, Black Panther. I thought that was a good homage to the comic book series by Jack Kirby that brought that to life. And with T'Challa, he doesn't want this fight. He's not completely in it. There's a point in the fight where he knocks him down, and then he says yield. He points the spear at him and he goes yield. Like Killmonger's on the ground, he's like yield. You don't really see it because it happens very quickly. You might miss it because the fight's quite intense, and you know, with the drum beats in the background, you might miss it. But there's a point where he's like yield, so he's like holding back a little bit, whereas Killmonger's going full blast, and you see a lot of disabling movements that Killmonger does to him before he knocks him down. He cuts him in his leg, cuts him in his abdomen, so he's disabling him just before he actually finishes him off, or almost finishes him off before Zuri kicks in. And I thought this fight story was very interesting. It's very emotional. Obviously, you've got the reaction of the crowd as well. You've got T'Challa's mother, Ramonda's watching. You've got his sisters watching, Shuri. You've got Okoye, Nakia comes in, the Dora Milaje, the other tribal leaders. So this is a fight that, look, it has to go in one or two ways. Someone's going to die or someone's going to yield. And you know no one's going to yield in this fight. You know Killmonger's not going to yield because he's on a mission, and this is like his life mission. You know T'Challa's not going to yield because, like he says in the scene before, it's my responsibility to make sure Wakanda doesn't end up in the hands of a person like you. Because he doesn't want this monster that they've created, as he says to his father later on, to be in a position of power so that he can cause hurt and pain to other people. But at the same time, he has empathy for his cousin. It's his family at the end of the day. It's his family. And like everybody who's seen the movie says, Killmonger has a point. He was wrong done, you know. He was an innocent child in a way that was just left, you know, to fend for himself. And the Wakandans and his father didn't take responsibility. They didn't take him in. Obviously, now T'Challa's carrying that guilt. So that was really well displayed within this fight scene, you know. But what I love about it is such an African fight scene. You know, you've got the drum beats going on in the score, which just adds to the intensity of the movements in the fight. So Killmonger, he's trying to reconnect with his ancestors and his African culture through the scarring. But he uses his anger to express that. So obviously in the movie, you find out that every scar represents a kill. You know, and some African tribes, they have these scarrings as kind of rites of passage. He doesn't really necessarily understand African culture as much as obviously he would like to, because he grew up in the United States. So he's trying to reconnect with his African culture through anger, through his pain, you know, and he's putting it as scarring on his body. Obviously, T'Challa grew up in Africa. He grew up in Wakanda, so he understands his traditions. He understands his culture. This fight represents so much of that. It's not just about these two guys trying to oppose each other. It's also one person understands where they come from, understands their culture, another person doesn't. One person's in one type of pain in the fact that he's discovered these things about his father that weren't perfect. And another man, he's trying to get revenge for his father because his father was killed by this man's father. You see on Killmonger's side, he's in pain. He wants revenge, but it's not just revenge. It's also the things that he was denied. He's angry that Wakanda was never revealed to him. He was never able to go there. You know, he's been hidden away. You know, it's like they abandoned him. You see that when he goes to the cultural plane and he goes back and speaks to his father. He's like, when he says, I'm right here, why would they not accept me? You know, because he's like, I'm afraid they won't accept you. Because obviously he was born in the United States. And this is a disconnect that a lot of African Americans and also Africans outside of Africa in general who brought up outside of Africa have. That duality of culture. You're American, but you're not really American. You're also African, but you're not really African. The emotions were really brought out in this fight, which I thought was great. As well as displaying African fighting styles, African warrior culture. I thought that was great to see on film, and it's about time. It's very overdue, and I'm looking forward to seeing a lot more of that on screen. You know, a lot more African martial arts, African warrior culture brought out. I'd love to see a movie about Shaka Zulu. I know there's a TV series, but I'd love to do a movie myself on him and a few other famous African warriors and kings, you know. And Black Panther really opened the door for that. Ryan Coogler, fantastic job. Absolutely love it. I can't wait to see Black Panther 2 and some of the fight scenes in that. I hope. The one thing that I didn't like about Panther was I felt like the fight scenes weren't as good as they should have been, But I thought that this fight scene was top notch, you know. Like, I was disappointed with the second fight scene between Killmonger and T'Challa at the end when they were in the suits, because there was too much CGI. And I would have liked to have seen a bit more of the fighting that we saw in Civil War with Black Panther, which I thought was outstanding and absolutely encapsulated the Black Panther and his warrior culture and a lot of those African martial art elements, especially the capoeira movements within his fighting style, as well as the panther movements, the panther cat kind of feline movements that he had in his fighting style. That was very grounded yet very extravagant, and I'd like to see a bit more of that in Panther 2. So hopefully we will see a bit more of improvement in the fight scenes in Panther 2. But this fight scene was really good, and I thought it was one of the, if not the best fight scene in the movie. So, if you like this video, hit that like button, share, subscribe, and comment down below. Let me know if you've seen Black Panther. What was your favourite fight scene? And what did you think of the Killmonger versus T'Challa fight scene at Warrior Falls? Did you enjoy the traditional elements of the fight? Who did you think was the better warrior, Killmonger or T'Challa? Do you think T'Challa was holding back a little bit? What did you think of like the movements within the fight scene, the weapons? I'd love to know your thoughts. Anyway, I'll see you next time for some more movies and martial arts and some more Fight Scene Fridays. Peace!